the most recent news here, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills signing a 4-year, $48 million extension on top of his rookie contract. So Bills running back James Cook, he had been having a hold-in at training camp, and he's back and signed, really culminating in a big offseason of re-signings for the Buffalo Bills. Teams talk about draft and develop quite often. Well, the Bills are doing it, re-signing many of their own players this offseason.
Yeah, like, they were dabbling in free agency. They brought in some players, half of which immediately got suspended once they did. But
for only 6 games.
It wasn't spectacular in terms of an offseason spending spree in terms of additions. But you're right. The big work that Buffalo did this offseason was just re-signing their own for the long term. And while some of that was, Josh Allen, obviously one of the biggest quarterback contracts in the NFL, a lot of it was like new money given to exactly what you're talking about, drafting low rounds, drafting well, and then needing to pay those guys in a few years' time. So the Christian Benfords of the world and locking those guys up long term. So from a roster health point of view, Buffalo, they don't have much cap space to spend. However, like almost the entirety of that roster is kind of locked up for the medium term now.
Yeah, when you look at the two deep, or at least the starters, there's only a handful of starters who have expiring contracts heading into this year now. James Cook would have been one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, the players that they've re-signed this offseason, Josh Allen, who you mentioned, Greg Rousseau, Christian Benford, the cornerback, linebacker Terrell Bernard, Khalil Shakir, wide receiver. So plenty of, hey, we're going to make sure that this nucleus remains intact. And by the way, a couple years ago, that was the plan, right? There was a bit of a reset for the Bills where they let many veterans walk out the door. One of them's come back in, by the way, Tre'Davious White. But they let many veterans walk out the door, guys that had been part of their nucleus for the last 4 or 5 years. They did go younger. Last year was supposed to be the slight step back so that they could move forward. It really wasn't. They were just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
And as in other years, inches away from, maybe making it to the Super Bowl. And now heading into next year, only 3-4 starters remain unsigned. So I think this is really good for the long-term health of the Buffalo Bills and their nucleus. And their offseason can be, all right, every year going forward here, let's add a little bit more through the draft. Let's continue to draft the best players and future-proof this roster, and then sprinkle in free agents as needed, like they did this last year where they said, hey, we're going to be load up on this defensive line to make sure that we have incredible depth. So from that perspective for the Bills, I really like this. From the James Cook perspective, you mentioned to me off air, just another $12 million a year running back, which has been pretty standard if you're above a certain level at the running back position the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's effectively the same contract that Aaron Jones signed for the Packers years ago, and then his contract was replaced by Josh Jacobs, who also signed 4 years and $48 million, and then that's become James Cook's contract, it's just kind of interesting that 3 guys have signed effectively the same headline contract in the last, half dozen years. And that, normally these contracts with the cap going up and up and up, they only go upwards. Adjusted for inflation, this is the same deal. But these are all literally the same headline figure deal. It's interesting for Buffalo because, look, James Cook has been a really good draft pick for them. A second rounder, come in. It was remarkable to me how much he was like Dalvin Cook, his older brother. But it felt like as a prospect, he was like 80% of Dalvin Cook. Very similar stylistically, looked the same, ran the same, carried the ball the same, but everything felt like it was sort of 80% of Dalvin Cook's peak. But since then, he's gotten better and better each year. And within this Buffalo offense, certainly last year, he was a spectacular part of it. And last year saw not just his workload increase, but like a explosion in production from a touchdown point of view, which always, grabs the eye. But he's been amazing for them. You just run into this classic dilemma of, well, how much is that worth in this landscape of, the current day NFL, where, we know how dependent running backs are and other things. However, countering that, you also have last year's evidence of Philadelphia, Baltimore, where it's like also in a great situation. Clearly running backs can, add a huge amount of value on top of that. So where are Buffalo in that world? And where is James Cook in that world in terms of, each helping the other?
Hey guys, real quick, only 40% of our viewers are actually subscribed, so let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and now let's get back to the action. especially explosive running backs, just like Saquon, just like a Jahmyr Gibbs. James Cook does bring a level of explosiveness to this offense with their varied group of playmakers, with Josh Allen, who, of course, is very difficult to defend. Adding the speed back to that mix has made this offense that much better. By the way, I always think about the plays that get lost in NFL history because the team lost. The James Cook 4th-and-1 touchdown in the AFC Championship against the Kansas City Chiefs, where it was incredible, high effort, reaches the ball over the goal line. That would have been one of the most legendary plays in Bills history, but also in NFL history, had they just pulled it off, right? It's going to end up getting lost.
It's the Julio Jones catch.
It's like the Julio Jones catch. Cook almost had one of the greatest moments. I mean, it's still a great moment, but of course they lost, so you're going to many people forget it. Last thing, pretty versatile running back room as well. Remember, Ty Johnson's there. They used him a lot on wheel routes and using him down the field as a pass catcher. And then Ray Davis, kicker extraordinaire / running back, who's just tough to tackle in his second year. So they have a versatile group of running backs. They will rotate those guys in and out. And again, I think offensive football is all about creating mismatches, showing different looks, showing different skill sets to the defense. And James Cook, of course, adds that with the other varied skill sets in their running back room and just overall with their wide receivers and tight ends.
The deal that this really might be adjusted for inflation is the deal that Austin Eckler signed a bunch of years ago with the Chargers. And for a while, it was like, that's as high as I would want to go.
That was like $6 million at the time, right?
Yeah, but that's kind of where we are now. You know what I mean? Like, that's where we are adjusted for inflation, not necessarily the Aaron Jones contract or the Josh Jacobs deal. Like, given the years that have passed and the amount the cap has gone up, I would say those are probably closer together than the actual dollar for dollar figure of comparing it to those other contracts. But that was, at the time, it's like, okay, that's a relatively modest contract relative to the salary cap, and that's kind of as far as I would want to go for a veteran running back. This feels in a similar area where it's like, it's a decent chunk of change. It's also probably the high level of where I would want to go before I'm looking for, could I get 80% of his production for a fraction of the cost?
It's tied for 6th in APY or average per year with Josh Jacobs at $12 million. Alvin Kamara is right above that at 12.25. But even that's a stretch below Saquon, who just got over 20, and Christian McCaffrey, who just got over 19, or just got to 19 over the last couple of years. And Saquon and McCaffrey were interesting because they had signed previous deals, and then both teams just kind of tacked on some more money to both of those guys, and they're still well above everyone else, including Derrick Henry, who's third at $15 million per year. So $12 million for James Cook and his production, just still finishing up his first contract here with one more year. Seems like a reasonable deal here for both sides.
Yeah, it's still
Bills are very well set up for this year and beyond as far as the roster goes.
Yeah, and from Buffalo's point of view, in terms of value, or do we commit this money to a running back? The question that is there, I think for Buffalo's point of view, it's a little bit like Philadelphia's last year, where it's like, if you can make it happen financially, like if you can fit it under the cap, you might as well. Like we just talked about, almost the entirety of that roster is signed long-term or ready to go, and they don't have any massive glaring needs. So if they can find a way of making this money work within the cap and allocate it to James Cook, you're better off having James Cook, given what you've seen from him in the last couple of years, than not having him, saving the money, not really having anywhere to spend the money, and needing to find somebody that can give you a good analog of what James Cook was bringing to the table.
All right, James Cook back with the Buffalo Bills. The hold-in is over.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
Check the Mic is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit this subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.
The all-knowing algorithm is convinced that you'll like these videos as well, and frankly, who are we to argue?